Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup. Mid-season power rankings. Okay, so I've got a bit of good news. I'm getting better day by day, and that hopefully means that I can up the content that's coming out on the channel, which I wanted to do originally anyway until this all cropped up. Anyway, enough about me. I said at the end of Stage 2 that I wanted to do some mid-season power rankings, because obviously a lot has changed since the start of the season in the Overwatch League, and I think it's time to give credit where credit is due to some teams and dish the dirt on some other teams as well. So, I am going to give an updated power rankings. Now, I will put the original power rankings on the screen. I can't remember whether it will be left or right. You'll know because the new power rankings will have the amount of places they've shifted in my power rankings. So that should be pretty obvious for you guys to work out. Now, obviously we've been surprised by some teams and let down by others. And the top three in my mind was always Vancouver, San Francisco and New York Excelsior. And I said this at the start of the season. I didn't know, and I don't think a lot of people knew what order that would be in. We knew all three were strong, but did we know how strong they would be? Now, at the start of the season, I caved in, because I did a lot of looking around before the start of the season. Everyone was saying Excelsior, Excelsior, Excelsior. They're going to run away with it this season. My gut feeling didn't think that. And I was split between the Titans and Excelsior. And it turns out that the Titans are a bit more accomplished with goats. And I think we already knew that, considering they were coming from Runaway. The big problems I had at the start of the season was knowing where Shurk were. Shurk have really impressed me. I thought they'd be very much improved on last season, but not quite as well as improved as they are. So, I've put Vancouver in first place for my rankings now, instead of second. And the New York Excelsior have now dropped to third. The biggest movers in those top six are pretty much Shurk. They've gone up 4 places from 6th to 2nd. I don't think Shurk are top. Because this is not playoffs. This is not playoffs standings. This is the standings overall for the league. What it will be at the end of August. So, I still believe Vancouver are going to get that first place. Simply because they've already beaten the Shurk in the regular season. They've got to play the Shurk once again, and they've got to play New York, and they've got to play London. Those are their hardest games left. So they can lose, if they can carry on like they have been. Now this is all very up in the air considering they lost at the end of last stage. If they can remain on their current form, I would expect them to lose no more than 3 games. Now, if you match that up with the current league standings, well, Excelsior are in second and they've lost 2. San Francisco are in third and they've lost 3. So, that would put Vancouver on track for that first place. That's why I've put Vancouver up there. San Francisco Shurk, I think, will overtake New York. Eventually. It's just they obviously got to play New York. But I think Shurk, at the moment, looking at how good they are, I think they will beat Excelsior. Excelsior, I don't think can keep up with Shurk and Titans on goats. And we are looking like we're going to be playing goats in the next stage. Although, this is all subject to what happens in the next stage. We don't know the map pool, we don't know the patch. Obviously, I think we all know about the McCree buffs on PTR right now. And it kind of went under the radar for me, but the Batiste buffs as well, which will help out DPS and goat and bunker metas. We don't know whether that will squeeze goats out. We doubt it. But if there was a shift away from goats, then this could look much different. So Excelsior in third. Spitfire I had in third at the start of the season. They've dropped down to 4th. London, they had a very difficult start to the season, and they are going to have a very difficult run in. But I have looked at the fixtures. Yes, London will have to play New York Excelsior twice in Stage 3. they'll have to play San Francisco Shock, and then they'll have to play Vancouver Titans in Stage 4. But that should still see them up there, I think. But there should be, I think, a big gap between 3rd and 4th at the moment. So, next movers. Los Angeles Gladiators. Now, I expected Los Angeles Gladiators to finish around the 7th place spot. But they didn't really do too much in Stage 1, but in Stage 2 they've really impressed me. They've really gelled as a team in Stage 2. So they've gone up into those automatic qualification spaces. They're up to 5th. And I think that is a realistic possibility for Gladiators. They could sneak 4th, but I don't think they're going to go any higher. I don't expect New York Excelsior to capitulate quite that badly. I think the top 3 will be Titan, Shock, Excelsior, so then you've got another 3 battling it out. And it depends how good London can develop and how good the Gladiators can develop. In 6th, they are joint biggest movers on my board. In 6th, previously I had Shock. Well, obviously that couldn't be anymore because I've moved them up. From 12th, I am moving the Dallas Fuel to 6th. Now it's brave, but I have a belief that the Dallas Fuel are only getting better right now. And under the coaching of Jane and Aero, I think they will continue to get better. I think we're starting to get back to the Team Envy days. Nearly. Just nearly. Obviously the league is much more competitive than it was in those days. It obviously wasn't the league in those days, but it's more competitive than it was, and I think Dallas are finally showing that glimpse of the fuel we expected to see in Season 1. So, I believe Dallas will get the last automatic qualification spot, but again, it's very much up in the air with the other teams I've got around there. Moving up 2 places into 7th from 9th are the Hangzhou Spark. So, Hangzhou Spark are another team. They came into this league. They were very, very good to start off with in Stage 1. Then they lost. And I've seen this happen with Chengdu as well, and Toronto. They lost and had a crisis of confidence. And they lost quite a few games. And got some poor results. But now they've got over that crisis of confidence. And you look at the way they demolished Spitfire in those playoffs of Stage 2. And I'm thinking, Hangzhou, this is good stuff. This is really good stuff. So, if we can see Hangzhou Spark build on that, they will be vying for the last automatic qualification spot, I would say, with the likes of Fuel, the Gladiators, and the team that are remaining, and the only team that haven't moved, are remaining in 8th, and that's the Shanghai Dragons. Oh, I'm so glad I'm not moving the Shanghai Dragons right now. Now, this is what you could call a ballsy play, I suppose, because currently Shanghai are 13th. But they did reach Stage 2 playoffs, and I think they're another team like Hangzhou. They are improving. And apart from the Titans, they're the only team in Stage 2 to take a map off of Shock. So I think we're looking at promising times for the Shanghai Dragons. I definitely think we will see them in those second group of qualification spots, the in-house playoffs. So I'm happy to stick with my 8th place finish for the Shanghai Dragons, but again, it could be a bit mixed up in that area. Now we're starting to get to 2 teams that have dropped down their rankings pretty heavily. In 9th, all the way down from, I had them in 4th originally, was the Philadelphia Fusion. Now, Fusion, you look a bit lost. You're in 7th at the moment, but they look lost. To me, in this meta, they look lost. Carpe is not, I can't believe I'm saying this, but not quite on the level with Azaria than he is on. We want to see Carpe on DPS, right? We know how good he is. And if we go to a DPS meta and we see Carpe on the likes of McCree or Widowmaker, you'll see Fusion go up those rankings. But in this current meta, I don't have a lot of confidence in Fusion. I think they will get to the in-house playoffs, but I don't think we'll see them up there in the automatics. I don't think they've got the the accomplished goats that's needed for that, to be quite honest with you. And the other team, also falling from 5th all the way down to 10th, is the Seoul Dynasty. Now, this is mainly down to Seoul Dynasty's massive inconsistency. It was looking really good for Seoul at the end of Stage 1. When I saw this, when they beat Excelsior in the playoff quarter-final, was it semi-final? Whatever. When they beat Excelsior, and they flexed in Marvel and Fisher, and it completely changes the dynamic of that Seoul team. Fisher's obviously more aggressive, they all become more aggressive with Fisher, but when you bring Marvel in, they're more defensive, a more New York Excelsior style. And when they forced Excelsior to play aggressive onto them, that is exactly what Excelsior don't want to do. And it made Excelsior uncomfortable, and Seoul ended up winning the match. Thing is, in Stage 2, they didn't do this. They stuck to Marvel. And they became a predictable defensive side. Not good. I kind of expected them to come in with this innovative, like, we can play aggressive, or we're going to play defensive, depending on who we play. And they haven't done that. So, if they continue like that, then I don't think we will see too much out of Seoul this year, to be quite honest. And if they continue like that, they become very predictable, and 10th might even be a struggle for them. So, I think it's there's potential for Seoul. It's just not being shown. It's very frustrating in some respects. So, we have another joint biggest mover. In 11th, I doubted him again, didn't I? In 11th, all the way up from 17th, we have the Boston Uprising. Okay, so there's a lesson to learn here, isn't there? We slated Boston at the end of before last season, before the inaugural season. We slated Boston before this season. And what have Boston done? They've turned around and said, hey, we're actually not that bad. Now, I have an excuse here. We didn't know about fusions before, when I made my original power rankings. Fusions has been massive for Boston. Color Hex has also been very good, which I had doubts about Color Hex originally. But Boston have gelled very well together around Fusion's shot calling. Obviously, we knew about Fusions from the World Cup and how well Team UK did. Honestly, without Fusions, I think Boston would not be where they are right now. I mean, they are 12th. They're on the fringes of those in-house playoffs, but I think they're improving. So, I don't think they're going to reach quite the highs that they did in Stage 3 of last season, but I think it's promising for Boston to try and get those in-house playoffs. Promising. In 12th, moving up 3 places, we have the Toronto Defiant. So, I was very skeptical about the Toronto Defiant before the season started, because it was a very mishmash team. Some were very inexperienced, some were experienced. And I wasn't sure how this team was going to do. And then they come into Stage 1, and they really do very well. A 5-2 record. And we're thinking, oh, hold on, have we found another top team here? And then they kind of capitulate in Stage 2. And it's kind of the old Hangzhou thing again. They lost a match near the end of Stage 1. I think it probably was against Vancouver. And then they had just had this crisis of confidence. And it all went away. And they've only recently, very, very recently, kind of got over that. But this has kind of put them back. They're currently in 11th in the overall standings. This is where I expected them to be. This is not far from where I expected them to be. Vying for that last in-house playoff place. So, I think this is Toronto's area right now. I don't think they're quite at the level of what Shanghai, Hangzhou, the Fuel, Gladiators, Spitfire, and the rest are at. One thing I will give to the Defiant, though, is the fact that they could overtake the Uprising, Dynasty, and Fusion. It depends on meta, and it depends on the consistency of Seoul and Philadelphia, mainly. Because you could see Seoul and Philadelphia really struggle in the next 2 stages if they can't find any consistency. You could see real problems for those 2 teams. Another big mover And I think most people wrote this team off at the start of the season, considering their whole and entire Chinese roster. Yes, Chengdu Hunters. I've moved them up to 13th from 19th. I had them second from bottom. Sorry, Chengdu. I think we've all been very, very impressed with Chengdu. Not just because they've been picking up some surprising results, not just beating the current champions, London Spitfire, but they've been showing us some really interesting stuff. Jim Moose Farah has been excellent. We've seen Among's Wrecking Ball, Hammond. And they've basically been playing stuff that's not meta most of the time. And it's yielded some surprising results. Obviously, playing something that isn't meta, when you come up against the really good meta teams, like Shock Titans, you're gonna struggle. So, Chengdu, 13th is just outside of the in-house playoffs, and they are quite capable of getting there. Again, if we go into a DPS meta in Stage 4, unlikely in Stage 3, but in Stage 4, then you could see that change, and Chengdu could have a real positive Stage 4 and get into those playoffs. But I think 13th is about where I put Chengdu right now. So, 14th, going down 4 places, is the Los Angeles Valiant. Now, originally I had Valiant in 10th, and it's difficult for Valiant, really. Obviously, they had an horrific Stage 1. I don't think anyone quite expected Valiant to capitulate quite as they did. But promising signs for the Valiant is that Stage 2 was much better. They are settling now, and they've made substantial roster changes already after Stage 2 is finished. So I think Valiant will move up from 17th, which is what they're currently in. But I think it's too late. Just a bit too late. They're on a 3-11 record right now, and the team occupying the last in-house playoff place is Boston on a 7-7 record. That's a gap. That's a gap. And for a team that's now going to have to gel, I think it's too late for the Valiant. I do think. They might sneak into the last in-house playoff place, but I think it's unlikely. So, in 15th, and they're moving down 4 spaces, is the Atlanta Reign. Now, Atlanta I had high hopes for. And in Stage 1, they looked good. And then Defran retired. And they got Baby Bay. Now, Baby Bay is a good player, but it takes time. When you take such a crucial component out of your team like Azaria, we saw this with London. It took them time to adjust from putting Birdring on Zarya to Prophet on Zarya. Once it got working, it worked really well. Same thing for Reign. They've taken time to adjust from having Defran to having Baby Bay. And towards the end of the stage, note the 2 wins over New York Excelsior. It doesn't matter whether they're Excelsior's bogey team or not, they beat them. Those 2 games showed that they are now gelling with Baby Bay. Thing is, I don't know whether it's enough. I think we might see Atlanta drop games. And as much as I love Baby Bay and all that, I don't think he's quite as good as Defran was. Because Defran had that unpredictability in him where he could run the Torb or something stupid like that. And it would work. And it made Atlanta unpredictable. And if you can be unpredictable, you can really catch enemies off guard. Hence, the first game Atlanta played on Ilios, went pretty well for them, didn't it? But Atlanta Reign might push on. Again, difficult to know sometimes. Difficult to know. 16th, going down 3 places, is the Paris Eternal. Now, I'm quite happy with my prediction for Paris. The reason being is, I'm quite smug about it actually, obviously I had Paris as missing out on the playoffs anyway in 13th, but now I've moved them down to 16th. Everyone billed Paris as one of the best GOATS teams in the league. And they're not. Far from it. Soon Zarya, not quite there. Similar thing with Atlanta right now as well, and Philadelphia. If your Zarya play in GOATS is not brilliant, then you're going to struggle. Hence why London have improved so much, because now they've got profit on Zarya, they're actually getting damage dealt properly, and the positioning's there. And it hasn't... You've seen it with the Dallas Full as well, with AKM. He's had some of his best seeds, some of his best Overwatch here. So he's been on that Zarya, and he's been doing really well. Really, really well. So, Paris, they're way too inconsistent. And I just don't think they're going to be up there. I just don't think they're going to be up there. It's a shame. I'm an EUer, so I'd like to see Paris do well, but especially with Cruz in the team. But I don't see it happening. In 17th, going down one place, we have the Guangzhou Charge. So, Guangzhou, they surprised us a bit at the early stage 1. And they really caused some upsets. Then they lost. And then they had a crisis of confidence. And then they couldn't actually win a map for ages. Guangzhou were never expected to be that good. A lot of people had them at the bottom of their rankings. Just because... And I hated this, just because there were so many different nationalities and how would they get them to gel. Well, I'm sorry, but Philadelphia Fusion did that last season. You look at that, Boombox from the UK, Carpe from Korea, you got Poco from France. You got a lot of different languages to gel within the Fusion, yet the Fusion were playoff finalists, grand finalists last year. So it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything at all. So that's why I didn't have Guangzhou quite as bad as other people were expecting. But they really did capitulate in Stage 2. And I think that's going to be hard to recover from. Guangzhou are currently in 15th and still within a chance of overalls. But their map differential is suffering right now. And I really don't expect them to make the playoffs. So, we get to our bottom 3. In 18th, moving down 4 places, is the Houston Outlaws. Honestly, I could put them lower. This is obviously off the back of their financial difficulties. Not their financial difficulties, but Optic and their parent organisation are obviously in the process of a change. And especially if they get bought out by Immortals, then it's going to become even more difficult for Houston with a lack of funding. So, Houston in 18th I think is realistic. And perhaps optimistic. You know, Houston is not easy. It's not easy, and I'm sorry, buds, but that is where they are at the moment in the overall standings anyway. Washington Justice I've got in 19th. They're actually up 1 place. I expected Washington to finish bottom. Yeah, again, these 3 teams, I would be astonished if they made playoffs now. I'd be absolutely astonished. Not much to say about Washington. They are improving. They're making good signings. It's just too late. On a 2-12 record, you need to surpass 7-7 and hope the other teams drop enough for you to get there. It's too late. It's just too late. And obviously bottom, I've got the Florida Mayhem. They made a transition at the end of stage 1. You needed a better transition in the off-season. I'm going to be very, very brutal here, Florida. You weren't very good last season. And you didn't really transition that well into this season. And then you thought, oh, let's go to an all-Korean roster in the middle of the season. Well, I'm sorry, I think that means you're going to finish bottom of the league. That's brutal. But it's my honest opinion. Yeah, Florida, it's going to take a long time. Next year, though, could be a different game altogether. Could be looking at another Shanghai Dragons. But those are my updated power rankings. There's stuff you can agree with. There's a lot up in the air. It's very difficult to predict the Overwatch League at the moment because it's all decided on such fine margins in the GOATS meta. So that's why you get these anonymous... I can't say it, but the odd results. So it's very difficult to predict. But all I know is Stage 3 and 4 are going to be super duper interesting because the likes of Shock, Vancouver, New York, London, the Gladiators, they're going to have difficult games to play. In the first week of Stage 3, we have the Vancouver Titans taking on the Gladiators, which is 1st versus 5th, and we also have the New York Excelsior taking on London Spitfire, which is 2nd versus 4th. So it's going to be an absolute blockbuster. I can't wait because we're going to see some really, really good Overwatch in the next two stages, regardless of meta. So, this has been a bit longer than I wanted it to be, but these are the new power rankings for the Overwatch League this season. Updated as halfway through the season. Next up will be the Stage 3 preview. That won't be out before we know more, because obviously Stage 3 doesn't start until the 7th of June. We don't know the map pool yet, we don't know what patch it's going to be played on. It could be played on the live patch that's on the live servers now, the anniversary update you could call it. In that case, it will definitely be GOATS. If it's not, then it'll be played on the patch that's on the PTR. That's obviously McCree buff, Diva Defense Matrix nerf, Batiste buff. That could be different, because I know a lot of people are saying McCree is OP on the PTR. We'll see. We'll see. A lot of the pros are saying it as well. I mean, Lynx has said it. He wants to be a McCree. He wants to play a load of McCree next stage if it's on that patch. We will see. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see you in the next video. See you now.